It's pretty good. So actually this video is going to be much longer with a recap and a detailed analysis of each arc, but I decided to scrap that halfway through the script in favor of a more brisk overview. The first part of this video will assume you've watched episode 13 of Higurashi 2020. I'll let you know when the second part begins, in which I will assume you have experienced the original story in some form or another. And finally, before we begin, if you're a newcomer to the franchise and haven't decided whether to watch Higurashi 2020 or have been apprehensive in your journey, I have a video tackling the subject linked here and below. Onidamashi serves as an alright introduction to the world and characters, and beyond certain details is nearly identical to the original's Onikakushi until the very end, where it seems to cut short of the original did. This is probably the weakest arc of the three, giving us seemingly the least to work with in terms of the overall mystery aside from basic exposition. I think it really just tries to make us, both newcomers and old-timers but in different ways, aware of the sort of story we're getting into. There's a lot of trippy stuff going on with the penultimate scene of the arc, with several details appearing to be off if we look close enough. I think it's very safe to say that we were not shown an honest portrayal of what went down, and am interested for the reveal of what actually happened. Interestingly, we don't know how much time passed at the very end. Mion jokes, "How many years has it been?" To which Keiichi replies it wasn't just 2 days this time. Some have taken this to be sarcasm on Keiichi's part, but I think the line was meant to parallel what Mion said at the beginning of the arc, emphasizing that it had actually been more than 2 days. This is something to keep in mind. I really like Watadamashi. Its direction seems to be the most flat of all the arcs, but the writing is top-notch. We are introduced to several key concepts such as the key families and the human culprit narrative. The twins' dynamic is great as always. We see Rika become depressed at the realization that Keiichi did not watch the dance, and by extension almost definitely went into the storehouse. And when he confesses to Rika in a childish manner, she snaps. The world is doomed, and we just have to watch it burn. We get to delve deep into Mion's character in an interesting way we never got to in the original, and it provides an added depth, especially if you only watch the Dean anime. I really enjoyed the spin this arc gave to the suspicion game. That the one being suspect seems to have good intentions. It makes total sense for Mion's character, and I love it. Tatari Damashi gives us insight into the bonds the club members share, and how genuine they really are, cursed nonsense aside. We get to see the dynamics given a serious situation in which they are actually united. Shion can get hot-headed when those she cares about are involved. Mion is a cautiously optimistic realist. Rena uses her clueless persona to her advantage when possible and can actually get pissed, but hides it better than Shion. And Keiichi is actually a charismatic speaker who with the right motivation can bring an entire village together. Oh, and we can't forget Satoko, who up to now was a mischievous brat with a penchant for traps. And actually she's competent and independent, both to her strength and to her detriment when it comes to calling upon others. And at the very end of the arc, we have our most shocking and confusing climax out of nowhere, and truths fused with lies. Personally, I don't think Teppei was actually there, nor did Oishi commit a mass shooting. There's actually more to work with here than you realize. In Satoko's shower scene, she had no bruises or visible injuries, yet she said Teppei flew into a rage and attacked her when Keiichi was calling her on the phone. She didn't take her medicine. That's a detail. Rena didn't say Oishi opened fire on the crowd or that he shot the club members. She said he pulled out his gun, then said everyone died. Oishi was up to something for sure, and I think it has something to do with when he went with Haruyama to visit Satoko. But I don't think what he was plotting was a mass shooting. He probably found someone or suspected someone and had his suspicions confirmed when he went to Satoko's house, and he went to the festival to confront who we believe to be the culprit. The light switch seems like a classic trap setup. I'm almost certain it's one of Satoko's traps, but I don't think it was harmless. I believe that it was intended to actually knock Keiichi out. That was actually the intention with the trap. Finally, look at the scene in the ED with Keiichi and the bat. Notice anything? The clothes are his casual clothes, which he wore to Satoko's house, and not the school outfit we see in the flashback in the first arc. And those arms don't look like Teppei's. More like a teenage or an adult woman's. It's fall when Keiichi meets Rena. Why does he still have the head bandage? And it's the same one he had at the other two arcs. I don't know if that's actually relevant. But why does he have it if it's months later, and why would they keep him that long for the injury? In short, Core 1 of Higurashi 2020 is a delightful, if flawed in some areas, ride that does a great job at appealing to fans old and new. It suffers from bizarre marketing choices that made it seem like a total remake at first, and then made it jump to conclusions when Episode 2 made it seem like a sequel. But it seems like that disorientation is starting to calm down somewhat within the fanbase, which I'm glad for. The show suffers from time constraints in some aspects, with horror parts being sudden and brisk, which works for a while, but to some the pacing can feel like it's dragging a bit. It doesn't bother me too much because pretty much any part of the show is delightful in its own right, and I think jank tone shifts are a part of the personality of Higurashi. All in all, it feels like Christmas every time a new episode is about to come out, and I've enjoyed theorizing with you all. With that, I will be moving on to the second part of the video and discussing spoilers for the original Higurashi. Thank you for tuning in, new fans. I will hopefully be doing reviews of each consecutive episode from here on out, so please consider subscribing if you're looking for that sort of content. Goodbye. Okay, time for the real stuff. I think we all kind of get what went down with Onidamashi, with Rena experiencing the Atonement arc, Tsumi Horoboshi in the background, and the fight with Keiichi being ultimately mostly a hallucination. There were lots of stuff like time jumps, like the time on the clock changes like back and forth in weird and seemingly impossible ways. So either the fight went on for way longer than we realized, or we were lied to about the timing of the events, which I think is very possible, combined with the fact that certain objects around the room, like the plant, were in areas that they really should not have been. As for Watadamashi, I think it was Shion until the Watanagashi festival, doing Shion things as she does in Watanagashi and Miyakashi chapters. And I think she was doing it faster than she did in those, if I believe she hadn't done as much up to Watanagashi as she did this time. But at some point, probably during that night, Mion managed to get the drop on her and killed her as part of, I guess, like a self-defense sort of thing. She managed to overpower Shion, essentially, and took over from there. Tatari Damashi is a controversial one among the fanbase, as it starts out mimicking the question arc Tatari Goroshi and then introduces aspects and in some ways follows closer to the respective answer arc Mina Goroshi, seemingly not committing to one or the other. However, if you look at it as a new project, I don't find really any flaw with this. I think it serves its job as getting us attached to the characters and seeing what they're like. There's a time crunch when it comes to adapting any visual novel into an anime, as visual novels tend to be pretty wordy, especially with Ryukishi. And with Higurashi, it's kind of hard to get attached to the characters if you just jump right into the horror, which happened definitely in the 2006 anime and to an extent in this one. And it's hard to kind of feel attached to the events that are going on if you don't really feel attached to the characters. And in this sense, I think it was kind of ingenious to have an arc that focuses on the characters early on, so that we can get a feel for them and what they're like without this spooky stuff going on. So I think that's actually pretty cool. Anyway, my theory is that Sadako killed Teppei early on, and something went down when Oishi and Harayama visited, not sure what, but somehow it ended up being the final nail in the coffin for Oishi's suspicion. During the night of Watanagashi, Sadako lured Keiichi in and attempted to knock him out. This fails, and he ends up still very much conscious and murders whoever he came across. Sadako hallucinates Teppei over Keiichi. Oishi tracks down the culprit at the festival, and things take a turn for the worse, making it seem like he was committing a mass shooting. The club members, as well as Oishi himself, die. That doesn't necessarily have to happen for Oishi. Maybe he was just arrested, but considering Kumagai's response to Keiichi, kind of just like a downcast stare and then not responding to his question when he asked about Oishi, I think he's probably dead. As for Sadako, I don't know. Either she killed herself or ran to the conflict and died there. I don't know, maybe she was even Oishi's target. It's possible, but I don't think there's really enough information to go on. Personally, I like this this adaptation much more than the Dean anime, and I'm sure that's gonna set some people off. Some people are very attached to the Dean anime, but I can appreciate that. I think that's a valid perspective, but in terms of Higurashi, I don't think it really fits in. Maybe I'm just willing to be more forgiving to Higurashi Go, as it's not exactly trying to be the original Higurashi, but I think even if it was, it's kind of doing a better job. It definitely puts the characters more first and foremost than the Dean anime did, and to some people that can be considered a flaw, as it kind of pushes the mystery, like kind of like crams that into like the last episode of each of them, and I get that, but I think this kind of proportion of content from like horror to slice of life stuff works a lot better for Higurashi, at least for the earlier arcs, and I appreciate that they did it. And as for the art style, I see a lot of people defending the Dean anime's art style over the Go art style, and I really just cannot see that at all. Some people will say that the jank added to it, that it made expressions scarier. Personally, it never really worked like that for me. It just looked bad. And I think these designs by Akio Watanabe are generally really good. I really like them. Of course, we're gonna have to see where it goes because it's not finished. It's only halfway finished, and that's assuming that there's gonna be one season. So I'm really looking forward to both watching the upcoming episodes and discussing them. Like, controversy aside, it's been a lot of fun discussing this with you all, and I'm really glad that we can have this sort of experience to share together. It's fun. It's fun. Oh, and one last thing I want to mention is that obviously these arcs do not stand up to the original visual novel arcs at all. That much should be clear, but I think that's definitely because this anime is just that, an anime, and it's going more for playing to the strengths of an anime. So each individual arc is not trying to be so much of its own story as the originals did. It's more playing into the overall mystery and getting us attached to the characters and showing different sides of them. And with that, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I go by Tasty Nachos, and you go by.